Welcome back to Bookish Dives. We're the place you come to get the core insights from essential reads fast.
That's right. And we've tackled a few different topics before. Finance, fitness, all sorts of things.
But today, we're diving into something really fundamental. Maybe the most fundamental thing we do without thinking. Breathing.
It's a fascinating area. Our focus today is James Nestor's book, Breath, The New Science of a Lost Art. And honestly, if you think breathing is simple, this book will make you reconsider.
Yeah, it poses this brilliant question right off the bat. We breathe constantly our whole lives. So why would you possibly need to learn how to do it? It seems absurd.
It really does. And Nestor himself, he starts out completely skeptical. He talks about going to this breathing class.
Oh yeah, the one in the dusty Victorian house.
That's the one. And he describes feeling annoyed and a bit resentful. Just totally uncomfortable.
Sounds like a terrible start. But something must have clicked, right? Because that experience really kicks off the whole book.
Exactly. Goes through with it. And the very next day he wakes up and this chronic tension he always had in his neck and shoulders, it was just gone.
Wow.
Yeah. And he felt this sense of calm and quiet he hadn't felt before. So that personal kind of unexpected experience, it sends him on this massive investigation.
They're looking for what exactly?
For this lost science of breathing. He starts digging into forgotten research by these pioneers he calls pulmonauts, people who were obsessed with breathing mechanics decades ago.
Okay.
And his big discovery, the core message of the book, is that breathing isn't just this passive on-off thing. It's like maybe the most powerful lever we have for our health, but are mostly doing it wrong.
All right, so let's get into that. How does he start to prove this? His own personal crisis seems key here.
Totally. He looks at his own history first. Modern life, right? Soft foods growing up, orthodontics, having his wisdom teeth out.
Stuff most of us have been through.
Exactly. And he argues that whole package resulted in what he calls an atrophied, underdeveloped mouth, throat, and skull. Basically, our faces didn't develop properly.
Which leads to breathing problems.
Yes. He points out this kind of depressing fact that modern humans are probably the worst breathers in the animal kingdom. So many of us are chronic mouth breathers, leading to constant nasal congestion.
Okay, I can see how that connects. Which brings us to that wild Stanford experiment he did.
Oh, yeah. This sounds like actual torture. He and another researcher, Anders Olsen, volunteered to have their nostrils completely blocked.
Blocked how?
With silicone plugs and surgical tape. For 10 whole days.
10 days just breathing through their rounds.
Only through their mouths. The whole point was to measure, like, how fast does mouth breathing mess you up?
And the results must have been bad.
They were immediate and honestly pretty shocking. Nestor's snoring, just within 24 hours, jumped by 1,300%.
1,300% in a day.
Yep, up to 75 minutes a night. And Olsen went from 0 snoring to over 4 hours a night, just like that.
That's insane. And didn't it affect their sleep apnea too?
Oh, massively. Sleep apnea events quadrupled. Basically, they started chronically choking in their sleep almost right away.
So beyond the sleep data, how did they actually feel?
Terrible. Just awful. They reported plummeting mental clarity, their body temperature dropped, and just this overall feeling of being stuck in a Groundhog Day of perpetual and unending misery.
Wow. It really shows how quickly mouth breathing stresses the system.
Immense, immediate stress, no question.
But what's really striking is the flip side, right? The performance aspect. You mentioned Dr. Douillard's work with cyclists.
Yeah, that's a great contrast. Douillard worked with elite cyclists and found that when they consciously switched to nasal breathing during intense exercise,
their performance changed.
Dramatically. One athlete at peak intensity went from taking 47 breaths per minute gasping through the mouth down to just 14 breaths per minute through the nose.
That's a huge difference.
It basically cut the effort required in half for the same power output. It's like tuning an engine perfectly versus letting it run rough. Nasal breathing is just that much more efficient.
Which brings us back to the why. Why are we so bad at this naturally, this evolutionary mismatch idea?
Right. This is where the concept of disevolution comes in. It's a term from Harvard biologist Daniel Lieberman.
Disevolution?
Yeah, it basically means when evolution, or maybe our modern lifestyle changes, leads us to adopt traits that are actually harmful, traits that get passed down.
Okay.
So Nestor looks at these ancient skulls, like from the Morton collection at Penn Museum, and they're different.
How so?
They have these big, wide mouths, faces that grew more forward, really broad airways, and perfect teeth. No crowding. They breathed easy, as he puts it.
So our ancestors were fine. What went wrong for us? Dr. Marianne Evan asked that question, right? Well, why would we evolve to make ourselves sick?
And the answer Nestor lands on is surprisingly simple. Soft food.
Soft food, like processed food.
Exactly. Starting around 300 years ago with the Industrial Revolution and changes in food processing, our diets became, well, mushy and soft.
So less chewing.
Way less chewing. We stopped putting the necessary stress on our jaw and facial bones. And without that constant work, they just didn't develop fully. The bones literally didn't grow as much.
Leading to smaller mouths.
Smaller mouths, smaller jaws, and critically smaller nasal cavities.
Hmm.
Our whole facial structure kind of collapsed inward compared to our ancestors, all because we stopped chewing tough stuff.
And the nose became a casualty in all this?
Right, which is terrible, because the nose, as Nestor calls it, is the silent warrior for our health. It does so much more than just let air in.
Like filtering and warming the air.
That's the basic stuff, yeah. Clears, heats, moistens. But the really crucial part, nasal breathing dramatically increases our uptake of nitric oxide.
Nitric oxide, I've heard of that. It relaxes blood vessels.
Exactly, it's a vasodilator. Nasal breathing boosts nitric oxide concentration 6 times higher than mouth breathing. And because it opens up the blood vessels, especially in the lungs,
You absorb more oxygen.
about 18% more oxygen from the same breath of air, just by bringing it through the nose instead of the mouth.
18% is a lot.
It's huge. And there's more. The nose is also directly wired into our nervous system.
Through the nasal cycle. That ancient idea.
You got it. It's fascinating. The right nostril is linked to the sympathetic nervous system, the gas pedal. Breathing through it tends to increase heart rate, circulation, body temp, feeds the logical brain.
Okay, the accelerator.
And the left nostril, that's the parasympathetic system, the brake. Breathing predominantly through the left nostril lowers blood pressure, cools the body, shifts activity to the creative brain, induces calm.
So you can actually influence your state just by which nostril you're breathing through.
Potentially, yes. It suggests this incredible, direct physical input for regulating our autonomic nervous system. It's pretty wild.
Okay, that's the nose. But moving deeper into the lungs, the book talks about the exhale being super important. Carl Stuff's work.
Yes, Carl Stuff and his breathing coordination. His whole thing was that the real key to lung capacity and, well, efficient breathing wasn't just inhaling more. It was the transformative power of a full exhalation.
So getting all the old air out is the priority.
Precisely. He found that most people, even athletes, were only using a small part of their lung capacity because they never fully emptied them. They always had stale air hanging around.
It's like trying to fill a container that's already half full.
Exactly. Empty it completely, then you can fill it fully with fresh stuff. He worked with emphysema patients, helping them breathe better just by focusing on the exhale.
And Olympic athletes too, right? Lee Evans?
Yeah, the 1968 U.S. men's track team. Stuff helped train them. They became so efficient at oxygen exchange, partly through better exhalation, that they didn't need supplemental oxygen before or after races. Unlike many competitors, they were just maximizing what their lungs could do naturally.
Okay, this makes sense. Breathe through the nose, exhale fully.
Yeah.
But then comes the really weird part. The carbon dioxide thing?
The Bohr effect, yeah. This one bends your brain a lot.
Because we're always told, breathe deep, get more oxygen.
Yeah.
But Nestor, and the science he digs up, says we actually need more carbon dioxide. It sounds completely backwards.
It does. But here's the deal. Discovered by Christian Bohr over a century ago. Oxygen gets carried around our blood attached to hemoglobin, right?
Right.
Well, carbon dioxide acts like the key that unlocks the oxygen from the hemoglobin, allowing it to actually get into our tissues and cells where it's needed. CO2 is the signal molecule for oxygen release.
So if you don't have enough CO2 in your blood,
The hemoglobin holds onto the oxygen too tightly. The O2 stays locked up in the bloodstream. Your blood can be fully saturated with oxygen, but your cells are effectively suffocating because they can't access it.
wow. So all those deep, rapid breaths people take thinking they're getting more oxygen?
They're actually blowing off too much CO2. This reduces the CO2 level in the blood, the hemoglobin clamps down on the oxygen, and low CO2 causes blood vessels to constrict, further reducing blood flow to tissues and the brain.
Which can cause dizziness, anxiety.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even breathing just 10 or 20% more than our body actually needs can trigger this whole cascade, leading to less oxygen delivery, not more. It weakens the system over time.
And this connects to Buteko's work, doesn't it? The Russian doctor.
Absolutely. Konstantin Buteyko developed his whole method based on this idea. He observed patients with conditions like asthma and realized they weren't suffering from a lack of air. They were chronically overbreathing.
Breathing too much, blowing off CO2, making their symptoms worse.
Precisely. So his technique, sometimes called voluntary elimination of deep breathing, is all about consciously breathing less. Smaller, slower breaths, often through the nose, to allow CO2 levels to normalize and increase the body's tolerance to it.
And this actually helps conditions like asthma.
Clinical trials have shown significant improvements for many people. Reducing the breathing volume helps relax airways and improves overall lung function by fixing that CO2 imbalance. It's basically retraining your body not to overbreathe.
Okay, that's a lot about what goes wrong. But the good news is, Nestor found you can reverse a lot of this damage, right? Back to his experiment.
Yes, when he and Olson finally took the plugs out after those 10 days of mouth-breathing hell,
The recovery must have felt amazing.
he was incredibly fast. Within days, Nestor's blood pressure dropped significantly, his CO2 levels normalized, heart rate variability improved, and the snoring and sleep apnea, gone, just vanished.
That quick recovery really underscores the body's ability to adapt, doesn't it?
It's amazing. It reminds me of those monkey experiments by Eagle Harvold back in the 70s. He blocked monkeys' noses.
Oh, poor monkeys.
Yeah, but the key finding was that after the obstructions were removed, their faces and airways actually started to slowly remodel back towards a more natural, healthier shape over time. It shows plasticity.
So the damage isn't permanent. Our faces and airways can change, even in adulthood.
That's a huge takeaway, which leads directly to the solutions for that disevolution problem we talked about. If soft food caused the collapse,
Then we need to stimulate the bones again, with chewing.
exactly. Pillar number one for fixing the structure, chewing. Nestor recommends getting back to tougher, harder, rawer foods that actually require significant chewing effort. Hours a day, ideally, like our ancestors.
Hours, wow. But does it work later in life?
Apparently so. He cites evidence that facial bones can continue to remodel even into our 70s. It's never too late to apply that positive stress.
Okay, chewing more. What else? There was the posture thing, mewing.
Right, oral posture. This comes from orthodontist Mike Mew. It's about consciously maintaining the correct resting posture for your mouth and tongue.
Which is?
Lips together, teeth lightly touching, and the entire tongue resting gently against the roof of the mouth. Plus, maintaining a good spinal posture, that kind of J shape, rather than an S curve.
Just holding your tongue there makes a difference.
The idea is that gentle, constant pressure from the tongue helps support and potentially widen the upper palate over time. And Nestor actually tested an appliance based on this principle.
Belfer's device, the homeoblock.
Yeah, it's like a retainer that applies gentle, intermittent pressure to stimulate bone growth, mimicking intense chewing. And his personal results were kind of stunning.
What happened?
He reports gaining 1,658 cubic millimeters of new bone mass in his face after using it. Measurable new bone growth.
Seriously. New bone in his face as an adult. That sounds almost unbelievable.
It does sound wild, but he presents it as evidence that we can actively remodel our facial structure with the right stimuli, leading to wider airways and easier breathing.
Okay, so we've got nose breathing, exhaling, breathing less volume, chewing, and posture. But then the book goes into these intense breathing techniques, right? Breathing plus boo.
Yeah, things like Tummo or the Wim Hof method.
Yeah.
This seems contradictory at first glance.
Right. If overbreathing is bad, why would you do super fast, deep breathing followed by long holds?
Because the purpose is different. These aren't about chronic overbreathing. They're about inducing short bursts of intense physiological stress, like a sympathetic nervous system overload, followed by deep relaxation.
Like interval training for your nervous system.
That's a great way to put it. It teaches your nervous system flexibility. Instead of being stuck either on, stressed, or off, relaxed, you train your body to switch between states efficiently and consciously.
And there's real science validating this, the E. coli study.
Yeah, that was a landmark one. Wim Hof trained subjects who were then injected with an E. coli endotoxin. Compared to a control group, the trained group showed they could consciously suppress the inflammatory immune response.
They control their immune system with breathing.
Essentially, yes. They influenced processes previously thought to be totally autonomous. It showed the power of these conscious breathing techniques.
And what about things like holotropic breath work, using hyperventilation?
Similar idea, different application. Conscious hyperventilation can sometimes lead to emotional breakthroughs, but it can also help reset your chemoreceptors, the brain vessels that detect CO2 levels and trigger the urge to breathe.
So if anxiety or panic is linked to overly sensitive chemoreceptors.
Then this kind of therapy might help recalibrate that internal alarm system, making you less sensitive to CO2 fluctuations and potentially reducing panic responses, all without drugs.
Okay, let's try and wrap this all up. It feels like Nestor presents breathing as this huge overlooked factor in health.
Totally. If we synthesize the core pillars from breath, it looks something like this. First, absolutely breathe through your nose. Non-negotiable.
Got it. Number one.
Nose. Second, exhale fully. Make space for fresh air. Maximize that gas exchange.
Two, exhale.
Third, breathe less. Reduce overall volume, slow it down, let that CO2 do its job.
Three, less is more.
Fourth, chew more and maintain good oral posture to physically open up the airways. Address the structural issues.
Hence, chew and posture.
And fifth, breathe more on occasion. Use those therapeutic stress techniques like Tummo or Wim Hof to build nervous system resilience and flexibility.
Five, occasional intense breathing. It really reframes breathing not just as automatic, but as something we can consciously control for major health benefits.
Exactly. He calls it the missing pillar of health. It fundamentally challenges the idea that our basic biology is totally fixed or beyond our influence.
We can actually use breath to control things we thought were automatic.
Yeah, things like blood flow, body temperature, nervous system balance, maybe even influencing gene expression. Breathing is this constant environmental input like food or exercise that we have direct conscious control over every moment.
It's a powerful idea that paying attention to something so simple, so fundamental, could unlock so much potential for health and well-being.
It really is a lost art rediscovered.
Well, if you enjoyed this deep dive into the lost art and science of breathing and want more insights like this, be sure to follow Bookish Dives. We'll keep bringing you shortcuts to being well-informed.